And looking at all the other athletes' bikes, I was like, man, I'm on the wrong setup. Everybody has a front brake. Everybody has like big downhill bikes, 6 inches of travel, 7 inches of travel, front brakes. And I was there on a hardtail single brake, and it was Cameron's bike. It wasn't even my bike. And I was like, well, here are the, well, and that, I mean, I just knew I had to make the, I just knew I had to make it work. Even though I didn't have the, I just knew I had to make it work. Even though I knew I didn't have the right equipment, I knew that I still had the ability to perform at a very high level.
So Cameron went with the wrong bike too?
Cameron had another bike. Cameron showed up with a dual suspension bike, a little 5-inch travel bike, front brake, gears, and definitely the proper bike for that setup, because when you're riding a hardtail with a single brake, it's pretty squirrely, and especially like at those high speeds, it's good to have that front brake and that extra suspension. And I definitely did not have the right equipment for that event.
So then that's why you had to borrow his bike.
I didn't have a personal bike. I mean, I had no money to go purchase a bike before the event.
Right.
Cameron was kind enough to let me borrow his other bike. Cameron had like 3 bikes, right? Yeah.
All right. So the bike that you had was one of his.
Yeah. So Cameron had three.
Right.
Cameron had 3 bikes. He has a downhill bike, he had a slopestyle bike, and he had the hardtail. And he was like, "Hey, I'll let you borrow my bike." Oh, he's like, "Hey, I'll let you borrow my hardtail. I'm gonna ride my slope bike."
So the hardtail's the one you used?
Yeah, the hardtail is the bike I used for my first Crankworks champion.
Okay. So
The hardtail bike there. The first year competing at Crankworks, I used a Santa Cruz hardtail. Single brake, sketchy.
Definitely. Had on jeans and a fucking t-shirt.
I had a half shell helmet, white t-shirt, and some black khakis.
And that's how you did it?
That's how I did it, man.
The wrong bike, wearing like street clothes?
And I mean, I went through with my own style. Like I said, I went into Crankworks the first year not knowing shit. Like, I didn't know any of the athletes. I didn't know any of the bikes. I didn't know anything. I just went there with my own style, kind of like figured this is what everybody was doing. And that's, I don't know, I think that's what kind of helped me win that event, because I was doing stuff that nobody was doing at that time.
All right, so you signed up for the event, right? You already signed up by the time you got there, or did you sign up when you got there?
So getting into Crankworks was actually a bit of a mission. Even, in 2004, it was still kind of a big deal to get in there. And Cameron wrote the event organizer and was saying, "Hey, I have a buddy that's a ripper, blah, blah, blah. I think he'll put on a great show. Like, is he allowed to come with me and compete at Crankworks?" And the event organizer at the time was kind of skeptical and wasn't really too stoked on me coming. And it went back and forth with emails with Scott Hart, Cameron Zink, a few other people pulling on my side. And then all of a sudden, the event organizers finally came back and said, "Okay, you know what? We'll give this Paul kid a chance, but he has to do qualifying." So I had to work my way to the finals for me to compete at Crankworks.
And you qualified there?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So some of the riders did not have to qualify. They were in the main show. For me, I had to work my way there, and I ended up winning qualifying and transferring to the main event the next day.
And how did you win the qualifying?
The way I won qualifying was throwing tricks that nobody was doing on mountain bikes. Everybody was the way I won qualifying was doing tricks that nobody else was doing. Everybody had these downhill bikes and a little too beefy for the terrain, I thought. And I was there with this, single brake, I was there with I was there on a hardtail single brake dirt jump bike, and it was definitely sketchy. But at the same time, it allowed me to do tricks that a lot of these other people weren't able to do because they were on the wrong bikes and had no idea what those bikes were able to do, you know?
So were you saving some of your tricks for when you would make it to the finals, or did you like
Yeah, in qualifying, I did not throw. Yeah, in qualifying, I played it pretty mellow, just enough. In qualifying, I played it pretty mellow. I just had a very consistent run. I just wanted to make it from top to bottom and transfer to the main event the next day.
Do you remember any tricks that you did in qualifying?
In qualifying, I remember doing a tail whip, a backflip. I think I did a 360, and that was it.
And the bike held up.
The bike held up. The hardtail held up very fine. I remember some of the obstacles. I remember some of the obstacles I had to put my foot down because I did not have a front brake, and the way I was slowing down was dragging my feet since I didn't have a front brake. I can clean that up a little bit. No. Yes. So some of the obstacles on the Crankworks course, some of the obstacles at Crankworks, you kind of needed a front brake, and I didn't have a front brake, so I would use my feet to slow down. That's good.
Great. And then you got in, right? And then did you celebrate that night?
Yeah, so I got in. I was super pumped. Got qualified. I don't know if I might have qualified first. I don't remember. I might have qualified first, and I was very excited because after qualifying, I was super pumped. Not only because I won qualifying, but I knew that I had way more to showcase.
Great. So the next day, what happened?
Next day,
So you're at the camper, right?
yeah. Next day, next day I was. Next day I woke up in Kurt Voorhees' RV, and I was ready to throw down, and I had no idea about who I was competing with. I had no idea about these top level athletes at the time, and I just put on my little half shell helmet, my white t-shirt, and just started walking up to the course. And the next thing you know, there was a big crowd showing up. There was 1,000, 2,000. I think must have been at least 10,000 people that year watching us, and I was so blown away. I was like, holy shit, this is the real deal for sure.
And then were you nervous?
I was definitely nervous because I wanted to win. Anytime I always entered an event, from the BMX days to even my first mountain bike event, I just want to win every time. And I was so nervous, and I had that same feeling on the start gate, knowing that even though I had nothing to prove, I still wanted to win, and I felt like if I didn't win, I would put a lot of people, even though, I was going somewhere there. I just remember at the start gate, I wanted to win, and every time I compete, I always want to win. And even in the early BMX days, to my first mountain bike event, to my first Crankworks event, and I had nothing to prove. I had no sponsors or anything, but I just knew that if I didn't win, I would maybe put a lot of people down. Maybe my mom or my friends, or I didn't want to come home and my mom be like, "Why'd you go to Whistler and spend all that money and you didn't get anything out of it?" She's that type of person. She would give me some shit about it. So I think I kind of I don't know, I think I put a lot of pressure on myself, and it's kind of funny to think about, 16 years old, and what's pressure at 16 years old? You have no responsibilities, you have no bills, you have nothing to be stressed about, but I was stressed.
So it's not just the stress of what are you gonna do, but it's also the expectations and not letting people down.
Yeah, well, you're just at, when you're 16, when you're at that teenager age, you kind of have to figure out what you're gonna do in life. You're gonna go to college, you're gonna get a 9 to 5, and I just knew that like